Welcome to the Travelman Podcast. I'm your host, Ben. And if you're joining me for the first time, I talk to people about their travel experiences. Today I have Stan the Greek on. He's my friend and a university professor who just happens to have travelled to the third world more than the first. He'll be sharing his experiences with us today, and I just can't wait. So stay tuned. Stan, how are you, mate?
Great, Ben. How
Thanks.
are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for coming.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Mate, I just want to ask you a question just before we start.
Sure.
You sent me an email back after I sent you an email just about in regards to the questions about the third world. You said that maybe I should say it's the undeveloped world. Is that right?
Sure. And I guess the reason for that is because I don't want to get bogged down by definitions.
Don't be bogged down by definitions.
According to the United Nations.
Well, we're live, by the way, but anyway.
Okay.
So, Stan, what we were just talking about there, listeners, was that I'd sent Stan an email in regards to this topic which we're going to do, Stan and the Third World. Stan's got a lot of experience in travelling to destinations that have been undeveloped. So, basically, for the remainder of the podcast, when I'm talking about third world, if it comes out from me, because it won't come out from Stan, I really mean underdeveloped, or what was the other?
Off the beaten track.
Off the beaten track.
Well,
so you've never been to Pakistan?
No Pakistan, no
I actually
Uzbekistan,
thought you
no
may
Kazakhstan.
have gone there.
No.
Never?
No.
You ever thought about it?
Sure. To go.
Yeah?
Particularly, I've heard the Himalayas in the northern part are fantastic, and that is something I'm very eager to explore.
So you've never done the Himalayas?
And I have done the Himalayas from Nepal and India.
Oh, okay.
But not from Pakistan.
Would you say the Himalayas from Nepal would be undeveloped?
For sure, yes.
Absolutely.
Certainly. So, I mean, the whole country is underdeveloped, not just the Himalaya areas. But it's undeveloped, but it's also a very beautiful country.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the most exciting countries to travel around. If you're interested in mountains and walking and trekking.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into trekking later on because I'm going to ask you your favourite trek.
Excellent.
So, I mean, you have extensively travelled around the world.
Yeah.
I know this. What drew you to travelling to countries that maybe the average traveller wouldn't travel to? For instance, those third world countries or a country that's undeveloped.
It's a tricky one, actually. And I think I was never really that well travelled as a younger person. Up until about 18, 19, I hadn't travelled much at all. And I think at about that age, 19, I travelled to Thailand with my girlfriend.
Yep.
And that was a bit of an eye-opener in terms of, what other parts of the world are like.
Yeah.
Coupled with that, I quite like adventure.
Yeah.
I quite like challenging situations, challenging places. And I do remember once watching a documentary, I think it was on National Geographic, about the host who was traveling in Nepal, in the Himalayas, and he was moving from lodge to lodge, small primitive types of villages, and it just looked amazing.
And it excited you.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I want to do. I mean, the lodges were literally a wooden bed with a dirty looking mattress on top.
Yeah.
But the scenery and the culture around was something that really pulled at me.
It'd be pretty stunning.
And yeah, fortunately, I got to do that. I think it's like in many ways for many people like myself, like places like Thailand or Indonesia are kind of like gateways into traveling in the developing world more and more. And as you know, I'm a researcher, and part of my research focuses on technology in developing countries. Yeah. So I've been lucky that I can couple my interest of traveling with my work.
Yeah, no, that's
which has enabled me to travel as well.
Do you reckon you could list off the top of your head, just
Sure.
list off the top of your head, how many undeveloped countries you've been to? Would it be more than 10?
Definitely more than 10. It's probably close to 30 maybe.
30.
Yeah, I haven't done a head count.
Not many people even get to check 30 countries off their list.
Some of them are short trips.
Yeah.
Some of them are work trips.
Wow.
Some of them are places where I've stayed for extended period of time, like India.
Yeah. India would be an interesting place, especially Kerala down south.
I haven't been to Kerala, but again, I stayed mainly in the mountainous areas. I did go to south as far as Goa.
Yep.
And some places I go back to.
Yeah.
like Ecuador. Other places I've only been once. So
Okay.
lots of opportunities for further traveling and lots of exciting new places as well.
Yeah. And whereabouts have you been in India, for instance?
So I think I landed in Delhi, if I remember correctly, and from Delhi, and in Delhi itself, and I was quite young at the time, was an eye opener. Fascinating place,
Yeah.
just in terms of the chaos, the business, and how the place functions. Moved west towards Rajasthan,
Yep.
then south to Mumbai. Spent some time in Goa, then made my way back up again towards Kolkata, Varanasi. And then up into the Himalayas, so into Darjeeling area, into Sikkim, and spent a significant amount of time around there.
One of my favourite films is The Darjeeling Limited.
I think I've seen that with Adrian Brody, right? Is that
Yeah,
right?
Adrian Brody.
I've seen it. I can't remember
Jason
anything about it.
Schwartzman and the guy with the big honker.
That's Adrian Brody.
No, they've all got big honkers,
Okay,
actually.
fine.
Oh, well, no, that's awesome. It's somewhere that I'd really want to go to.
It's funny. It's a challenging place to travel around.
It does seem
but
challenging.
One of the things I liked about India is like you wake up in the morning, you start your day, and literally anything can happen. It was quite exciting.
Do you remember off the top of your head again where you were staying, or was all that planned ad hoc, or did you already have all the cities that you were going to, all the hotels that you were going to stay at, all the motels or whatever?
Nothing was planned. Especially in the case of India, it was a case of landing in Delhi and figuring it out.
That's exciting.
It's exciting. It was
scary.
I wouldn't say scary, but the kind of the time or the age that I was at the time, it worked quite well. If you have energy, you have a bit of time, and of course have some money to make sure that you can pay for some accommodation, or you have backup money in case something does go wrong to have a backup plan. It was quite fun.
Is India a place for any traveller? Would you say, like certain parts?
Certain part. It depends what type of traveling you want to do. Yeah. Some places, as a single male, I didn't really have a lot of problems, but I encountered young females who had issues traveling by themselves.
I've heard that.
Again, as a male, relatively safe, fun to travel around, easy-ish in terms of deciding what to do on a day-to-day basis and getting from A to B. If you don't mind a rough bus ride or, long train rides. And the train rides can be first class or second class.
And everyone's hanging off the side of the train.
I did have one of those train rides from Varanasi to Darjeeling. I got on the train, I got on the train actually, and the train arrived. I had actually paid for a sleeper berth, which is like a bed which is turns into a seat, basically. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's by coincidence or by design, but I met some other people on the platform, and our seats were all together. And there was four of us, four, let's say, Westerners. Backpackers, and two locals. And getting to our seats was an absolute nightmare. There was people in the aisles. I think someone had brought a refrigerator onto the train with them.
What?
Like, where were they going to take the refrigerator? How did they even get it on there?
Do you have any live chickens on board?
No live chickens, but just shoving our way through. And we get there, there's like four people on your bed. You have to excuse yourself and try to be polite. Say, look, that's my seat in my bed, and they get off. And then during the night, just got worse and worse. And I woke up at one stage during the night, and there was someone. I was sleeping. I'm using my backpack as my pillow, and there was two people actually sitting on my legs. And I was like,
that's good.
And then later on in the night, just asked them to get up, and they kind of. In the end, I think even though I asked them to get up, I think in the end I accommodated them rather than accommodating me. But there was literally nowhere else for them to go.
That's great.
And during the night too, there was a female traveling in that group.
Yeah.
She was, let's say, I wouldn't say she was attacked, but she was, let's say, felt up by somebody on the train. So she woke up screaming at one stage, and then we tried to find out what was going on, but that person was long gone.
Oh man!
And that continued. Like, it was just people getting on the train and more people. I don't know how they were getting on. And obviously there was people selling things on the train at the same time, like tea or whatever. And that was chaos, but it was definitely an experience for me.
That sounds like an experience, Stan. Was there a time in India actually that you had a dangerous situation?
No, not for myself actually. The only dangerous situation for me, I remember being in Goa and walking home from at nighttime along the beach, and through the villages was dealing with the wild dogs. And
Yeah.
they would for some reason they would just gravitate towards me, and because they could smell the fear. They would
smell your...
They would be coming after me, and in the end, I quite sadly, in the end, I was saved by an old lady who came out and shooed the dogs away very easily. So it was quite embarrassing that I was panicking and fearing for my life, but an old lady came in and saved the day just by yelling at the dogs and asking them to go away.
Goa's by the water, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard of Goa. I would like to go there as
It's
well.
a nice place. I don't remember the beaches themselves being anything spectacular.
Yep.
Kind of greyish water, quite heavy seas or heavy beach. But lots of parties around there. If you're a person that likes to party, or I was when I was younger. But nice place to explore, quite chilled out as well.
Yeah. What about being sick in India? You always hear horror stories of people
I was sick
being
in
sick.
India, in Agra actually, which is where the Taj Mahal is.
Yeah, okay.
And I was so unwell that at one stage I remember being on the platform with my friend, and I literally could not see in front of me.
Really?
Yeah, it was terrible. And, obviously, we can say upset stomach.
Yeah.
It's probably the nicest way of putting it. It wasn't pleasant. And that carried with me for some time. It must have been 10 days before I got rid of that. I don't know what made me unwell. My friend was also a little bit unwell, but not quite as unwell as myself.
Sure.
But I think in some ways in India, I hate to say it, but especially if you're not used to traveling to that type of place and that type of food, then possibly you have to just grin it and bear it.
Grin and bear it. Fair enough, Stanley.
Part of the experience.
Yeah, fair enough. And you got to be careful with the drinking water there. Obviously, it's all bottled water.
Yeah, I as far as I remember, I drank bottled water.
Yeah.
And like I said, don't know what made me ill, if it was food or the water or something else.
Yeah, this has become the India podcast.
There's plenty of other places to talk about as well.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that. So I would like to ask you, what's the most dangerous situation in the world that you've ever been in? And can you remember a time when that happened to you? Was it in the third world?
Yeah.
Or the undeveloped world?
I wouldn't say feared for my life, but I'll say that I've been in some hairy situations.
Let us tell the audience about your hairy situations.
Okay.
So.
Where to start? So probably one that was one of the most hairiest was in Quito in Ecuador, and
in Ecuador,
Quito is known as not being a little bit dangerous in terms of muggings and things like that. But if you stick to yourself, you don't go looking for trouble.
Yeah.
You stick to the main streets, etc. At night time, you're careful, it's fine. But in my case, the situation was that I was walking home. I can't remember where I was coming from, but I was approached by, I think, 4 police officers, and they kind of ushered me down into a slightly more quiet street off the main road. And then came questions about what I was doing and going through my bag. I don't know what they were looking for. And then started getting a little bit rougher and rougher. And then a car turns up, and the car was like a small, like a little hatchback from the 90s or 80s. And the person who was driving was, as far as I could tell, was not a police officer. It was someone in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt.
Oh my God.
And they were asking me to get into the car. And I said, there's no way I'm getting the car in my limited Spanish. And it was kind of some shoving me to get into the car. But I think possibly what they wanted was a bribe. They'd been through my wallet. They saw I had some US dollars in there that I'd withdrawn from the bank earlier that day to pay for a trek that I was going to do in the next few days.
Okay.
And I don't know for sure. I don't know if one of them managed to take some money out of my wallet or not. But maybe they did. Maybe they didn't.
Yeah.
Hard to say. But I did not get in that car. And what I basically was start making more and more commotion to the point where people were kind of stopping to pay attention as to what was going on. And then they let me go, basically.
Wow. Are the police known to be a little corrupt?
No, I don't think so.
In Ecuador?
Like I said, they may have taken me around the corner somewhere and taken some money, maybe asked me to withdraw some money from a bank. But listen, I'm speculating here.
So it's not commonplace, obviously.
It could be commonplace, and I'm not an expert on
police in Ecuador.
Police in Ecuador.
Policing in Ecuador.
And that's just one person's experience.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone else's.
Yeah.
That goes to Ecuador and Quito.
Yes. The other experiences, like things like when I was traveling in Sikkim in India, I did a trek that involved crossing the border from India into Nepal. And as was often the case when I was younger,
Nepal's north of India.
kind of from Sikkim was kind of like crossing over to the east.
Oh, right. Okay.
West to the west. Sorry.
Yep. Gotcha.
I was a little bit underprepared. My map was probably something I had picked up in a hostel, which may have not been the most complete. And that check I think involved crossing the border. I wouldn't say illegally, but it's not quite legal just to cross the border over the land like that without passing any checkpoint, anything like that. So I was a little bit lost at one stage. It was getting dark. It was good. The clouds were coming down, and I was starting to get worried.
Yeah.
I probably could have survived the night in the cold with a decent sleeping bag that I had, etc. And I was walking up and up and not really knowing what I was doing. I could hear someone shouting and waving at me in the distance. And I looked up and I could see a figure in a green outfit. And
Military?
yeah, it was a military person, or soldier.
Oh my.
And somehow I'd been back on the. So I thought I'd cross over to the Nepalese side, but obviously I was on the Indian side.
So you're still in India?
And it was like a lodge, and I thought it was meant to be a lodge, but it was actually soldiers there that have, I don't know if it was their base or whatever,
Yeah.
or if they'd commandeered a lodge. It was maybe a small group of them there, maybe 20. And look, they looked after me, actually. They made me some dinner. They gave me a bed for the night.
Oh, that's
I
nice.
quite polite. I like talking to them.
So they spoke reasonable English,
Yeah,
or
as
you
far as
speak reasonable Indian?
No, they spoke English. As far as I remember, that wasn't an issue. I mean, I probably kept to myself. I mean, I was quite.
You are someone that does kind of keep to yourself.
But also a little bit intimidating being around now. I wouldn't be
for
going
sure.
around trying to make best friends with everybody. I may have had some cigarettes that I left with them as well, which is a nice thing to do. Nice way to make friends. And they were quite polite. I had some dinner, had a bed for the night. But in the morning, I was told in no uncertain terms to get the hell out of there and go back down the way I came.
So did they change their tone on you?
Yeah, just a little bit. I think they were just trying to intimidate me into not continuing, or perhaps
Did you mention though that you wanted to?
I can't remember what I told them, but I went down a little bit, and in the end, I ended up crossing the border into Nepal anyway via another path.
Okay.
So that was the one situation where I was a bit concerned about, staying outside in the Himalayas. It must have been 3,000 meters plus overnight. Would have been a little bit tough situation, but I'm sure I would have survived. And I've had other issues in the mountains too, in not so high altitude, but in Bulgaria, my trekking companions and myself were chased by some wild dogs, and these things were quite feral.
Oh man!
And luckily,
did someone have a gun just in case?
There was about 4 of them, 4 of the dogs, and there was 5 of us. So I think man for man, we could have just about matched them. Probably not, but the dogs thought so, obviously, so that was okay. But the reality might have been different. And we had sticks and stuff with us as well.
Vicious Bulgarian dogs.
Yeah, and there is quite a few wild dogs in those mountains.
Oh, okay.
In Jordan, when I was crossing over from Jordan into Israel on the King Hussein Bridge, there was an instance whereby we crossed over by bus. You cross over onto the Israeli side. There's a checkpoint. Everyone gets off the bus. They check your passport. Everyone gets back on the bus, except for me. So I was told that I couldn't get back on the bus. That they wanted to ask me some questions. And again, I was taken into a room and asked some questions. And the reason I mentioned that is at the time that was quite intimidating.
That would have been intimidating,
but intimidating. But I also quite found it quite exciting as well, because I knew I'd done nothing wrong, and I knew that nothing could really happen to me in that situation.
Sure.
Possibly that it's I may have looked a little bit strange as an Australian backpacker coming through Egypt, then Jordan into Israel. I was actually there to visit some Israeli friends. So
did they think you may be a terrorist?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe they just it's part of their job to be curious about what people are doing.
Fair enough.
Asked me some questions, nothing too intimidating, and it gave me a nice story to tell my friends back on the bus when I caught up with them as well.
Wow. That's pretty amazing, man.
Yeah, and in terms of danger in general, I've always felt quite safe and sure of myself, partly because, we know what is reasonable behaviour in our home countries in terms of being smart and staying out of trouble. You just apply that in other situations as well. You kind of learn where to go, where not to go. I think I'm quite good at blending in as well.
Right, yeah.
For instance, I travelled with a Danish lad. He was about 18, 19 years old. He was 6'5", blonde hair, and he stuck out like a sore thumb. And wherever he would go, he would get into trouble. His first day in Bogota, before I met him, he'd been robbed by 3 16-year-olds. And this is like, the guy was a man giant, but he was mugged by 3 16-year-olds.
How does that happen?
I don't know. I think he's a young fella, intimidated.
Yeah.
Bogota in Colombia has a dangerous reputation among some people. And
sure.
whenever I went out with him in Bogota, he would just always attract people coming up and like pestering us.
They were interested in this tall,
I think it just
blonde man.
But also they were asking for money or trying to sell him drugs. I think he just stood out like a foreigner big time.
You ever been asked if you want drugs as well as some guy's sister? Has that happened to me in Mexico? In the one breath.
Not the sister, but I've been asked for if I want drugs and women plenty of times before. In fact, once I went for a run early in the morning. It was like 7 a.m. on a Sunday, and someone came. I think it was in Jamaica.
Yeah.
So, someone came running up alongside me asking if I wanted to buy drugs. I just laughed. I thought, like, if I was a drug taker, would I be going for a run at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning? But good on him for trying, right? I love the enthusiasm.
Did they have a bottle of water with them as well, so they can give you some water while you're running?
Not that I'd take it. But the reason I mentioned Bogota in that instance is because places like Bogota and Mexico City have dangerous reputations, I'd say. But I felt relatively safe there. Again, applying some principles of common sense.
Yep.
But also, I think I blend in, which is quite useful. Someone looking of Greek heritage, looking Greek, can kind of blend in South American countries a lot easier than some other people.
Yeah, you do have quite olive skin.
Yeah, in places like Guatemala City, though, I didn't spend a lot of time there, but for the day I was there, I did feel an edge. I think at the time was maybe the murder capital of Central America or something. Yeah. No, it just felt a little bit tense.
Felt tense.
It felt tense there.
That's amazing.
But I mean, as you're traveling, you hear stories about people. When I was in Mexico, one of our friends we were traveling with, at one stage, her bus had been pulled over by bandits, and the bandits had gone on the bus and they roughed up everybody for their money.
Yeah.
And she was hit in the back of the head with a gun. In Laos, I remember when I was traveling around, there was as you're traveling through rural parts of Laos, on certain parts of the road there'd be a man there sitting there with a rocket launcher or a machine gun, and you're approaching them and go,
wow,
what's going to happen here? Yeah. And then the bus driver or the ticket person on the bus would throw some lollies or some candies out the window to the person, and that's kind of like a way of paying them. They're actually securing the roads rather than making them. But interesting situations like that.
You got to be respectful, though, don't you? When you're overseas in a country that's not your own.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of the cases, and I don't really need to go into this, where I've heard of things where things have gone wrong for travellers. It's usually, not always, but sometimes it's due to them looking for mischief.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you are unlucky, you're unlucky. But on the whole, I felt relatively safe.
All right, fair enough. So, have you got any travel tips for people when they do travel to places other than London, Paris, New York, so forth? So, say if there's someone that do want to go to the countries that you've visited, have you got any tips for them?
I think
to make sure they stay out of trouble.
The main thing is do your own research to an extent. It's easy to say that, but a lot of time we don't have a lot of time to do research, like to probably study a country. But at least know about the first place you're going to get to. So if you're going to go to, so use Mexico as an example, you're going to arrive in Mexico, perhaps have your first 2 nights accommodation set up. Even if you plan to go freestyle, maybe have the first night or two set up at accommodation, so you have a plan A when you get out of the airport. I think common sense is an important part in terms of making sure you don't go looking at for trouble.
Yeah.
If you are going to party, keep it reasonable. Make sure you have good people around you that you trust.
I think that's a big thing, having a bit of a group, especially if you do travel to those type of places, especially the undeveloped worlds.
Yeah, I think so. I think, I travel by myself a lot, but one of the things I didn't mention earlier about when you asked what draws me to traveling in some of these places is that often in a hostel or through other means, you will encounter a group of people and the camaraderie you have about traveling around together and choosing good adventures together is quite fun. So even though I would have been traveling by myself a lot of the time, sometimes it was with my wife or friends, But often you create a group, and it's quite fun to travel and explore together.
No,
with that
that'd be a hell of a lot of fun.
I think other advice is, if you're new to this type of traveling, just pick your locations, pick softer, let's say, or gentler introductions. Thailand is a good one. Places like Argentina, maybe Vietnam.
Yeah.
Other places where that are kind of accustomed to travelers and have the support services, but it's still kind of like maybe rough around the edges.
Yeah.
It is a nice stepping stone.
Because you could easily just pick London and then get involved in a terrorist incident.
That's true.
Anything can happen.
I mean, this is the thing too. It's luck can play a role as well.
Absolutely.
And there's also, even in some of these major cities, there are probably places you wouldn't want to go to, which are probably more unsafe than some places like in developed world that people are concerned about.
No, for sure. For sure. Have you got a favourite city in the third world that you've travelled to?
I quite like Quito, actually.
Quito. Where was Quito again?
Yeah, Ecuador.
Ecuador.
And the reason for that was it is a pretty place. It is very nice, friendly people, a good launch pad for going out and doing other activities. But I was there for the first time I was there for work, for doing research.
Yeah.
And I stayed at a homestay, and it worked out very nicely. I was there for a few months. And just had a good overall. It was more the experience rather than the city itself that I was attracted to.
What's Quito known for?
Has a couple of nice. I think you'd call them Gothic churches.
Yep, French Gothic, probably.
Yeah,
I'm
not sure that's the right term. But let's just call them churches then.
Let's just call them cathedrals.
Cathedrals, but they're quite different than what I'm thinking about. It's
Gotcha.
quite different. It's quite a compact, easy-ish to get around.
So it's not too large, Quito?
No, it's not too large. It's in the mountains, so it's in the altitude, and I love mountains. So
wow.
You have easy access to some nice mountains around there. There's an old quarter as well. I think that's what I quite like. But also, it's in Quito and Ecuador in general. What I like about it is it's compact in that if you want to go do some mountaineering, if you want to go to Cotopaxi, which is an inactive volcano.
Okay.
It's like, I think it's 5,000 meters high. It's easy access to get there. You can fly out to the Galapagos Islands.
Wow.
You have...
You've done the Galapagos?
No, I haven't.
No.
I've been to Ecuador twice, but unfortunately on both occasions I had reasons not to do Galapagos Islands, which were pretty poor reasons in hindsight, actually, because I'm not sure when I'll be going back there again.
Fair enough.
And okay, so you asked for advice. My advice is if you do go to Ecuador, make sure you do the Galapagos Islands, because no matter what excuse you have at the time, it's probably not good enough.
Yeah, definitely good advice. Ecuador is in Central America, yeah?
South America.
South America.
South America.
The top of the south or the south of the south?
Yeah, so it's kind of in the middle, I would say, in some ways.
Near to Portugal? Oh, sorry, not Portugal. Paraguay?
No, so it's Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina.
Okay. And obviously Brazil make up
South
America.
Bolivia's on the
other side.
On the other side, east side. And in there also you have Paraguay, Uruguay, and Suriname, etc.
Yes.
On the top north, and Venezuela.
Have you done a lot of the south of America?
No, I've been from Colombia through Ecuador, Peru, Argentina, maybe a little bit into Chile, around the salt flats. And that's a fantastic trip, actually. But I must say that journey, as much as I love it...
elements that you didn't like?
Elements that... What I didn't like, I loved it. I love it because you speak one language all the way through.
And that
great way
is
to develop
Spanish?
Yeah, great way to develop Spanish. I love the fact that you're traveling through the Andes, which is fantastic.
Pyrenees is nice too.
Yeah, Pyrenees is very nice as well. You're traveling through the Andes. I love the culture. I love the adventure from places like in Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, different things to do. What I don't like is the vast distances. Because it's so mountainous, there is no real train network.
And it would take you so long to get anywhere.
Yeah, and because I prefer to travel overland rather than flying, because I think by flying you cut out a lot of sections of a country.
Oh, for sure. You don't see the scenery. You don't feel how the locals live.
Exactly.
You would not experience that if you just travel by plane everywhere.
Exactly. So, but traveling by bus is challenging in different ways because it's just long distances. And at one stage, the group I was with was myself, my wife, and a couple of others. We were on an overnight bus ride every 3 or 4 days, just trying to make some good progress. And that was quite. It kind of wears on you a little bit after a while. So by the time I got to Buenos Aires, I was like, I'm quite happy to move on from here.
For sure. Would you say that Ecuador would be your favorite undeveloped country?
No, for that, I think it would have to be Nepal. And that's purely because of the Himalayas and the accessibility to the mountains and walking. And
how high did you get in the Himalayas? Base camp?
No, I never went to base camp, but I was easily over 6,000 meters. I did Annapurna, which was like a 2 to 3 week walk non-stop, just keep going from...
How dangerous is that, though, getting to 6,000 meters on Everest?
No, I mean...
No breathing equipment?
No, 6,000 meters. I mean, Everest is 8,000 plus, so... But I've been to 6,000 meters a few times, and including in the Andes as well, climbing Chimborazo in Ecuador. It's tough, but you can do it if you're acclimatized, etc., and you go slow. Even places like Cotopaxi, like I said, is 5,000 meters. I think Annapurna gets you as high as 5,000 something. That's something worth Googling. But I do remember the altitude over the pass affecting me, but other than that, I was quite okay.
And the tracks or the trails that you chose to climb these mountains, obviously they were safe and everyone else was using the same track?
Yeah, that's the beauty of Nepal. Some of these paths, like Annapurna circuit, it's relatively, not, I wouldn't say easy, because physically it's quite demanding, but in terms of knowing where to go, there's not too much scope for getting lost. If you go the right time of the year, when visibility is good, you follow a path. There are other walkers. There are walkers in groups. There are walkers by themselves. There are walkers who might be 2 or 3 people, and they have a porter to carry their bags. So lots of different groups of people around. And it's very, as far as I remember, it was odd not to see someone every few hours, if at the most.
So if you ever got into any trouble, you know that someone would be passing you to probably give you a bit of assistance.
I think so. And you're actually moving from village to village.
Okay, so there's always, you'll start one morning at one village and finish that afternoon in another village?
You can walk for 7 hours, you can walk for 2 hours. One day I was walking with some friends that I met out there, and we started walking one village in the morning, and by the time we got to the end of that village, which was only like at 200 meters, they decided they'd had enough for the day and stopped, but I kept on going. So you can walk as much or as little as you like. Really.
Yeah, sure.
But usually I was doing about 7 hours a day. At one stage, a friend I was traveling with had gotten a chest infection. On top of that, he had lost his passport and his wallet, and he thought he'd left them in a previous village, so he walked back to the previous village and came back again the same day. So it's about 12 hours of walking in one day.
Sure.
And he had blisters all over his feet, so he wasn't in good shape. And it was quite clear that financially he couldn't support himself for the next 2 weeks after his wallet had been stolen, and I had limited means. So
what did he do?
We hired a horse and someone to walk the horse, and I walked him, or we walked all together. Actually, he sat on the donkey to the horse, whatever it was, to the nearest airstrip.
To get what airstripped out?
Yeah,
to get flown out,
just to Kathmandu, which would have been a short flight. But the funny thing was,
who paid for the flight?
It wasn't too much. I don't know. It might have been $80, $100.
Fair enough.
I don't know how much it was now. But the funny thing was that we sorted out the horse and the person to take care of the horse for us the day before. But then overnight there was a huge dump of snow.
Okay.
So we get on the horse and we make our way down to the airstrip, and we get there and we're asking about when the next flight was coming, because it was meant to come that day, and the staff, they were like, well, of course it's not coming today. It snowed overnight. Didn't you realize that? Like, oh God, how stupid of us. Of course there's going to be no flight today. So I think he stayed there for 1 or 2 nights maximum before he was able to fly out.
Oh man.
So there are ways.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, considering we were talking about treks and climbing mountains, what's been your most memorable trek? Do you remember?
I think Annapurna is one that stands out.
For the nature? For
the nature. The views are spectacular, meeting people. And because it was 3 weeks, just going...
So 3 weeks actually trekking?
Just trekking. It was really fantastic for that reason. And because the trek is a circuit, and you go over a pass, you actually see different parts of the Himalayas. One is quite greener, and the other one is drier on the other side. So it's really fantastic scenery there.
That would be amazing. And you would have done that in the summer, I'm
I
guessing.
think it was May time I did that. May, April. And in between, so while I'm doing this, I would stay in a village for maybe 2 days just to rest. But as I'm resting, I would go and do day walks in the opposite direction to check something out. So lots of opportunities to do side treks as well, which is fantastic. But I also like El Cocoy in Colombia.
Oh,
That is probably a place that very few trekkers go to.
Is that somewhere you recommend for a trekker to go to?
I was there in 2009 or 10.
Yep.
And the reason why not many people have gone in the past is because of internal security issues. I think it was a FARC kind of controlled area.
A FARC.
FA is RQ. It was kind of not allowed to kind of go there for some period of time. But it was fantastic. Really beautiful scenery mountains.
Yeah.
Really nice.
What made that different to the trek in Nepal?
I think the mountains in Nepal are quite sharp. In terms of
so it's more visually
quite
different.
stunning.
Yeah.
That part of that mountainous range was a bit more rolling kind of mountains.
Okay.
If you can visualize that.
I'd love to do something like that,
But
Stan.
it was just nice. It was like I remember having to hitchhike out there.
Yeah.
A small group of us, very friendly local people, and that is a place where we saw no other trekkers actually. From memory now, we saw nobody else.
How long were you doing that trek for?
That was only a short one, 5 days or so out there.
5 days. So if something did happen, you could always turn around, and it would only be a few days.
People, we weren't doing any climbing.
Yeah.
We didn't need.
It's pretty flat for a trek.
No, I wouldn't say it was
That
flat.
one was pretty steep.
Yeah, it was pretty steep.
Steeper than the Nepal.
No, I mean
about the same.
Different because Nepal you're going up and you're coming back down the other side.
And with Nepal, did you need any actually climbing gear?
I can't remember.
Like ropes and hooks and all that type of stuff?
No. Ropes
Nothing
and hooks,
like that.
I've done that in the Andes, Chimborazo, climbing Cotopaxi. In Colombia, it was quite dry as well. I can't remember what time it must have been October time.
Mm-hmm.
So there might have been snow around on the peaks, but it was relatively dry.
And safe to walk around.
Safe to walk. No issues there.
Would you ever try and attempt to climb a mountain peak or do a trek where you know it's going to be snow and it's going to be difficult? Like something that you can really challenge yourself?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, and I do like that. I mean, technically, I'm not the best climber just because of experience, but I mean, I can handle ropes, I can handle ice axe and etc. But I would if I'm going to do something very technical, I would like to have someone with me that knows much more, let's say,
well, isn't
experience.
That the thing? You always have a buddy?
Yeah, always has a buddy, but also probably even a guide. And the Atlas Mountains in Morocco, you can do that trek quite easily. It's quite accessible.
So someone like me could do it?
Very beautiful as well. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
But my friend and I, when we did it, we hired a guide and we went around the back way, and that was very challenging. I couldn't even tell you what name of the route is now, but there was snow up to our waist at one stage, and we would like literally.
Wow, that would have been difficult.
Through, and you walk and you fall into like a small gap, and like you get stuck, and you come back out again. It was like that for maybe a few hundred meters, not the whole walk, but that was fantastic. But for people that are interested in trekking, and maybe the Himalayas seem a bit daunting, there are more accessible places. Mount Kinabalu in Borneo is a relatively straightforward 2-day walk, 1 day up, 1 day down.
That's about 5,000?
I think it's 4,000.
Or 4,000.
I say straightforward. Your legs are going to hurt afterwards because anytime you go straight back up and come straight back down again, your legs hurt. And
what's harder, going up or down?
Down is probably harder.
Really?
Yeah. Your legs feel like jelly after coming down for 4 hours or 5 hours.
Because you've gone up already and you've already used all the energy.
I think you use different muscles when you're coming down because you're kind of like braking a lot, putting pressure on your quads.
Okay.
But yeah, something like that is very accessible. Other nice treks that I've done that don't involve mountains is El Mirador in Guatemala.
Yeah.
And that was a trek we did about 10 years ago now. A group of friends, we kind of came together in a hostel. We were speaking with a hostel owner who says he knows of a good trek to some ruins that are kind of relatively undiscovered called El Mirador.
El Mirador.
El Mirador. And then so we organized some guides and some porters. I think we had some donkeys too. And we set up
always
for the
got to
jungle.
have a donkey.
About 120-kilometer walk through the jungle.
Yep.
If I remember correctly.
Do you have to cut away?
No,
jungle.
not quite extreme. A few nights staying in camps here and there in tents.
Yep.
And And then we get out there, and the ruins were covered in like jungle still, so there's relatively undiscovered.
That sounds so amazing.
It's fantastic.
I'm going to have to get all these places that you've been to and put them in my show notes. So
sure.
give me them later.
You'd have to remind me what they are as well.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah.
And that trek was fantastic. And there was there were some tents there that had been left there, like for let's say archaeologists or some scientists that were exploring those
the ruins. Yeah.
But because it wasn't wet season, they weren't there. So I guess they only come for a few weeks of the year or off and on, whatever. But there was a security person who was working there who was kind enough to allow us to have a look around.
So he's a friendly guy.
Yeah, I guess so. And it was quite fun being out there. So in terms of spectacular, you can't compare that with Annapurna or whatever. But it was fun. It was an adventure. It was nice to be out there in the ruins. That was quite fun. And relative, I mean, Central America, and it was fun for walking, actually. It really was.
Oh, that's good. Sounds
but also, I must say, even though we're mentioning these places, I also like walking in places like the Lake District, the Pyrenees, Lake District being in the UK, Pyrenees, France and Spain and Andorra. So lots of fun places.
Because you spent some time actually in Leeds. Is there many walking tracks, or is there many activities like that you can do from there?
Leeds is fantastic because it is very close to the Dales, not too far from the Lake District. So, and even just around
the Dales?
Kind of like a national park.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Around there, and even it's close to places like Otley, which is fantastic for walking. I got into trail running there as well. So lots of beautiful trails for running.
Oh wow!
Really, really pretty and picturesque place. And what I love about that place as well is it. As much as I love walking in isolated and remote places, I also like going to a nice pub at the end of a day's walk and having a nice pint of ale and a nice meal as well. So they both have their advantages.
Especially after a long hike or a trek. Can you remember the best accommodation that you've ever stayed at and the worst?
I mean, I've been quite fortunate because for work, I've been able to stay at nice hotels like whatever, Hilton, Marriott. I don't know if they're 4-star or 5-star, but they're pretty good. They're not amazing, but they're pretty good. But I've also stayed in some bad places as well. I was just talking to my wife about it on the way over. We stayed in a place in the north of Colombia in Cartagena.
Yep.
And South America was the type of place that most hostels would have kitchens. So you could cook your own food, and that was quite useful if you're traveling for a long period of time. You make your own dinner, you make a quick breakfast, etc. But this kitchen had cockroaches, they had ants everywhere. You opened the fridge, it was moldy, it was disgusting.
Amazing how they're open.
And it's amazing. And if I remember correctly, the rest of the hostel wasn't that great either. Okay. And that was one of the few occasions where we actually got up and we left a place.
And you found a new hostel.
Place. Yeah, I mean it was just gross. Any place that doesn't look after one part of the facility like that means it's kind of raises question marks over other places. But fun places too, like in Bolivia, in La Paz, in the Witches Market, which is an area let's think of it as like an old quarter.
Yeah.
We stayed in a place which was probably wouldn't even make it on a scale of 1 to 5-star, and the mattresses were made of straw, but they were very comfortable. Straw was some kind of material that we're not really accustomed in modern mattresses. It was kind of hard, but it was comfortable. The shower had wires hanging out. You had to be careful not to get an electric shock.
Oh my god!
But it had atmosphere, had charm. It was comfortable enough for us.
Yeah.
So remember places like that. I kind of remember places that have a nice communal area. We get to know people, or they have something kind of special about them.
Yeah.
In terms of a nice atmosphere. And then some homestays I've stayed at, or quasi homestays /
what's exactly a homestay?
Homestay is where you would go stay with a family. I mean, I say homestay, but the place I've stayed at were kind of like homestay.
Like an Airbnb?
Yeah, because think of it, Airbnb with a local family.
The local family.
But it was never really a family for me. It was usually one, in the 2 instances I've stayed in one was in Ecuador with an old lady who rented out 4 or 5 rooms to the kind of longer term travelers. She spoke no English, but it's a fantastic way to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
And another was in Bulgaria, in Sofia, of all places, where I don't even know how I found this place. It was a lady, she must have been 65, 70 plus, spoke no English, only spoke Russian and Bulgarian, and rented out 5 or 6 rooms. I wouldn't call that a homestay, but it's kind of like in between a homestay and a hostel.
How'd you communicate?
I kind of like learned the basics of Bulgarian, probably Russian. But learned the basics of Russian. That was like maybe 12 years ago, 15 years ago now. But we got along fine. It was quite nice in some ways.
Yeah.
But now more and more, because I'm traveling with a family, it's more about Airbnb or service apartments.
Yep, service apartments is a good idea.
And then I've mentioned hostels a few times now, but I haven't stayed in a hostel for maybe 6 years now. Not really something.
Never stayed in a hostel.
Not really something I would do anytime soon unless I had to. If I was going back to Nepal or to put trekking, for example, and I had to, I would. But otherwise, I don't think I would stay in one.
What's your favourite art gallery, Stan, and museum in the world? I just thought I'd ask you that.
It's a good question, and probably other people can answer this better than me, because I found that when I would encounter museums or art galleries, I would kind of whiz through them very fast. And maybe,
you're one of those guys.
Maybe underappreciate them.
Yeah.
But the ones I have enjoyed the most, and these aren't in let's say, the developing world, would have to be things like the British Museum, British History Museum, and even the Leeds Armories. And the reason I say that is because I've been there so many times, and when you go to a place over and over again, you can appreciate it more because you have more time to sit and absorb and learn.
For sure. And
things.
The Leeds Armory, is that just basically what it says? Leeds Armory
it's just weapons.
Just
it's the biggest collection of weapons over the ages anywhere in the world. It's fantastic. I've probably been there 15 times.
And is it only like English weapons, or is it weapons from
everything,
all around the world?
Yeah, everything from all around the
world. So that's something that if you're in Leeds, you should get there and do it.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. And because I lived there for so long, that
yeah.
any guest that would come over, I would take them there, and they would always have a good time. Some random museums that I remember is a Amber Museum, AMBER Museum in San Cristobal in Mexico, which was a collection of amber with that had kind of, let's say, captured or solidified around insects or other objects from like the prehistoric era or whatever.
I think Jurassic Park when I think of amber, a bit like that, with the mosquito locked inside.
That was quite fun and interesting. But for me also too, because I like to experience things, I've enjoyed outdoor museums more. When I say outdoor museum, I mean places like Petra in Jordan, or think of Rome.
I mean like a live museum.
Yeah, where you go outside and you're walking around and you can experience in your own time ruins. And Petra was fantastic for that. I mean, Petra for me, in terms of ruins or archaeological sites, has to be one of the best in the world. Just the approach, walking around, and seeing things carved out of rock, it was just fascinating.
That would be fascinating.
The same goes for Palenque in Mexico. As I mentioned Rome already. Walking around Rome is fantastic, and like places like Meteora in Greece as well. I think I quite like to experience things, walk around, see things in their, let's say, the natural habitat.
Yeah. Now, have you got a favourite beach, Stan? And is it Thalassa, Crete?
It's not Thalassa, Crete, although viewers probably heard earlier you mentioned that I was married in Crete.
Yes.
And you were there for the wedding.
I was there for the wedding.
And Thalassa is a beautiful beach. I think the whole of Crete beach is amazing.
Yeah.
Elefonici, Balos Beach.
Yeah.
Some of my favourite beaches in the world. And Crete is probably one of my favourite destinations in the world as well.
To travel to, or just to have a good time at?
Both. Like, it has mountains. Okay, they're not super high.
It's got that gorge.
The mountains, got gorge. It's got amazing food, amazing beaches, lots of culture. It's compact. It's easy to get around, so you can drive from one site to another site. And of course, I speak Greek as well, which makes it easier. But it's definitely one of my favorite places. But in terms of other beaches, and we're talking about the developing world today, I quite like Puerto Escondido in Mexico, in Oaxaca, which is on the east side, Mexico.
Is that near Playa del Carmen, or
no, east side? Isn't Playa del Carmen?
That's east side.
Is it? Okay, so maybe it is. Maybe we need a map here.
Yeah.
Again, it's a lot of these places I haven't been to in some time, so it's good enough that I can remember the names of them, to be honest.
It's pretty amazing.
So Puerto Escondido was a beautiful beach in terms of like nice waves. It's kind of like down from a raised up kind of type of town.
Yep.
And just lots of fun around there as well.
That's awesome.
I also like Tayrona National Park in Colombia, which is a beach that's not really designed for swimming, very strong currents.
Yeah.
But very picturesque, but very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to traveling, we're very spoiled when it comes to beaches. I think
We are.
It's very difficult not to go to a place without nice beaches. Like all of Thailand, basically, is a nice beach. Vietnam,
Yeah.
other parts of Mexico. Also, other parts of Morocco is fantastic. Has some fantastic beaches.
Yep.
But a place I really like was Sinai in Egypt.
Cyanide.
Yeah, Sinai,
Nice.
Sinai.
It's not cyanide.
No, not Sinai. And Sinai was fantastic. Was beautiful deserts. Okay, we talked about trekking earlier, but there's some beautiful desert walks you can do in Sinai as well as
wow.
Morocco, to oases and places like that.
Ooh.
But the Red Sea by Sinai is fantastic.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. And it's not a traditional beach in terms of...
Can you swim there?
You can swim, but it's best for snorkeling and scuba diving.
Oh, really?
And there
Is that closed? Enclosed? Is that area enclosed? Like, has it got access to the seawater, or is it a lake? Or
No, it's on the sea. It's Red Sea.
it's on the sea.
It's the Red Sea.
Gotcha.
And one place I remember was staying, you just walk. It's terrible to say this, but you actually walk out along the corals, crashing the corals as you're walking out.
Oh, no.
And then there is a drop, a very sharp drop.
Yep.
You just drop down in your scuba gear or snorkeling gear and just have a look around. And there's a blue hole that's there. And the blue hole for me was amazing. You would drop into the blue hole with your snorkeling gear on, and you'd be literally surrounded by thousands of fish
Wow.
and sea life. It was fantastic.
That does sound pretty amazing.
And the same as, I mean, not beaches, but Sipadan Islands in Malaysia, Borneo.
Yeah.
There was an island off Belize that I visited. And I was actually Googling on the way here, trying to find a name, but I couldn't find it.
That's
There's a
okay.
few there. I think it was
Belize is another place that
Cayacorca?
looks... Cayaconca?
Corca, maybe?
Yep.
Caulker.
Yep.
It's an island where there's no cars.
Oh, wow.
Relatively small local population, quite a few tourists, beautiful beach, easy access for scuba
Yep.
diving and snorkeling. I quite like that place, but could talk forever about nice beaches.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And have you got any underrated locations which you think that people should travel to other than going to, say, Thailand or Bali? You know, the usual type of places that people would go to, even Europe or America.
I think lots of them. We've kind of concentrated on a few countries today. I mean, there's large parts of Africa I haven't traveled to. I haven't traveled to lots of like the Stan countries as well.
Yeah. So is that on your list of places to go to? Some of the stands?
I think so, but I kind of need a reason to go there. It would be nice if I had a work trip organised out there. But
maybe. Yeah.
on top of that, I feel like I need a lot of time to explore those countries properly, and I don't really have that at the moment. Yeah. But in terms of underrated places I mentioned like Nepal, Ecuador, Bolivia is a fantastic, underrated place.
Yeah. It's places where usually people wouldn't go. They're quite off the track.
Yeah, it's true. But I think if people are considering they're not that experienced in traveling to a place like this, once you are there, you will not be the only person there. I mean, even places in Bolivia.
A lot of places speak English, I'm sure. I mean,
not just about speaking English, but there are other travellers around.
Yeah.
It's quite accessible.
That can help you out if you need a bit of help.
Exactly. So you're not completely isolated. I've been to Iran. I quite liked Iran, travelling around in Tehran. I quite found it a fascinating place. I'm interested in that, kind of the history of that area from Greece all the way through to Iran.
Have you been to Libya?
Not to Libya, no.
Yeah.
So I can't answer that question with one specific place.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But I do believe that people should look outside of their, what would you call it? They're narrow-minded.
Sure.
Yeah,
I also narrow-minded, but it's understandable too. And in recent years, because I have a young family, I look for easier options when it comes to traveling. So
that's an easy option.
With a young family, I'm not going to Nepal, but we went to Singapore a few years ago in Europe, and maybe this year we will go possibly back to Europe. So, but if I have to wrap it up by picking 3 places, I'd probably pick Nepal. As you can tell, I have a strong
you love
Nepal
Nepal.
place. Ecuador, and maybe Sri Lanka as well. I haven't talked about Sri Lanka, but I quite like Sri Lanka. It's like India, but maybe a little bit less chaotic, easy to get around because it's a smaller place. And generally, I find that smaller locations, smaller countries, more enjoyable because you can go there, you can enjoy that one place, and it's easier to get around.
And you can see a lot of the place.
Yeah, rather than being stretched for time, having to fly around.
So Nepal, Ecuador,
Sri Lanka.
and Sri Lanka are your top 3 underdeveloped?
Underdeveloped or off the beaten track.
Or off the beaten track
locations,
countries or locations to visit in the
and
world.
you can probably travel in these places as a 5-star luxury guest or as a backpacker or anything in between.
So there's many options for people.
Sure. Yeah, and I think you and I should probably visit one of them in the near future.
I reckon that would be an amazing thing to do. You and I do one of those countries without the girls.
That might be difficult, but we'll try.
Do you reckon we can get Jacob to come along with us?
Possibly.
He'd probably want to. Escape feeding kittens. He'll love that I mentioned that. Maybe. But anyway, Stan, it's been amazing having you on, mate.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for telling me all your stories. I'm sure the listeners would love it.
Lots of good memories coming back there. I apologize to anybody if I've mispronounced any locations or cities or names because...
Was there a location that you were thinking that you mispronounced?
I'm sure I've messed things up, but I'm running on memory here and there's a lot happening.
No, you're right. I'll put a lot of these things in the show notes.
Perfect.
We'll chat later about all that. But yeah, thanks for coming today. You can always catch me on Twitter. I'm TravelManPod at Twitter. On Twitter. I'm on Instagram, Travelman Podcast. I'm on Facebook, Travelman Podcast. I've got a Wix website, which I'm upgrading to travelmanpodcast.com soon. So it will be on a different website, but that's accessible. I'm on Stitcher. I'm on all good podcast apps now, iTunes, everything.
Great.
And the listeners are going up, which is fantastic. So thanks again, Stan. And I hope everyone enjoyed today's podcast. I know I did. And I'm sure Stan's got plenty of other stories he can tell me on another podcast maybe. Would you come back on one day, Stan?
Sure, enjoy.
Awesome.
Probably I'll do some more research next time.
No, that's okay.
But, sure, let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Take care, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.